Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's New Cyber Frontier.
Welcome to today's episode of New Cyber Frontier. On today, you see that we have a round table if you're looking at the video version of this. But today we have all four of our hosts on. This is Christopher Gorog. We have Martha Laufman, Tim Montgomery, Sean Murray. And we also have 5 guests that are going to do a roundtable on a year in review, the special year in review episode. We have Alexander Blanc, Sebastian Peluru, Dan Einrich, James Lacey, and Alfred Ortiz. All of them came up with some of our best circulated shows in 2021. So we invited them back on to kind of give a recap of why they were the best shows and what they're doing right to gain attention worldwide to be our special guest here. But welcome everybody. Sean, welcome. How are you?
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks, Chris. It's been a heck of a year for everyone. Just all the stuff going on with the pandemic continuously, all the various variants, the travel, and then it's been super busy, I think, for everyone. Just pivot to all the different things that are going on out there. But happy to be part of the contribution this year. We did this last year. It went over well, and so glad to be back.
Yeah. Martha, a little bit from you. We kind of threw you into the mix this year, you and Tim.
Hi, Chris. I think, this was a good year. I was happy to join your group here. So thank you for inviting me.
All right, Tim.
Yeah, echo the sentiment there. Martha said, thank you for inviting me. And it's always I thought at first getting on and hosting this, Chris, was going to be one of those, I don't know if I can do this, but once I got in there, it sounded like I just slingshot right into it. And so it was awesome, great experience. I'm glad that you invited me.
Yeah.
We've
both been a good ad for this year and taking some load off of me. So thank you. But now kind of our guest today, we this is our year in review. So the first the roundtable we're going to do is let's give a recap of what happened in 2021. What were the highlights and why so prominent with your shows and so well circulated. But we'll start with Alex.
Hello. Well, happy to be there. Thank you for the invite. I was kind of surprised, but seems that my ranting against the cloud stuff made some noise. I'm happy because this is a great opportunity to make things better. Sadly, as we saw in 2021, to answer the question of the highlight of the year, we saw like many changes in digital transformation that has been accelerated by the pandemic. And in that rush, we lost control of everything. I mean, not us, but worldwide organization. We have a lot of mistakes in that rush, and it's understandable. We are only humans. And the amount of leaks and breach and security issues that we faced have been kind of terrible. Although I enjoy criticizing the cloud failure because, me, a privacy guy and stuff, I think there is a big room for our enhancement ahead. And something that we lost this year is accountability and responsibility, because we kind of dropped everything on the pandemic. And, we shouldn't have, as organization, as project owner, we, in any situation, take responsibility of our things. And when I see that we drop that, I think we have an issue. So going ahead 2022, that's something we're going to speak about. But definitely accountability, responsibility, and overall taking control back on our information stack is something that's going to be a key.
All right. Sebastian.
I can only learn how to mute my phone or my Zoom quickly. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. And I'm also kind of surprised that my my blabber was well listened in the podcast. But I came from a different view of startups because I'm a CEO of a startup, and my background has been was a senior executive with the United States government, and worked very heavily on the IoT and the operational technology cybersecurity. So from that perspective, and I echo what Alex has been saying, but there is one thing that we always miss is if we have X number of cybersecurity staff, we expect them to do everything that is under the umbrella of cybersecurity. So here comes the pandemic. So now we have everybody working from home. They have to take care of that and their regular jobs. So there's been a lot of stress among the staff. I hear that from a friend who has a very large data center in Asia. It's been a very hard for the cybersecurity guys, but this year very notable. I don't have to say much. You can just go to CISA and see it. But ransomware and the malware has been the number one issue. It has been really, really bad this year. It is getting worse every year by year. And also, the underlying issue has been the supply chain and the vendor security, which has been on the radar, at least on my side when I was in the government. But it's kind of really hard to encompass the whole thing and try to make it end-to-end secure. So that has been another big issue for us. And of course, the most important thing about cybersecurity is the data and the privacy issues that we have. These are the top three issues that I see. But most importantly, I do see that my question, that we can discuss later is how do we manage cybersecurity when people are so stretched out? Do companies increase their cyber load with the more staff, or how do we do this?
All right. So Daniel, kind of to you, what were the highlights of 2021 that you saw?
Excellent. Pleasure to be here. And my activity is focusing on industrial cybersecurity. And maybe I want to surprise all of you, but there were not too many, actually very few directly oriented cyber attack on industrial control systems. And we still see a situation that too many people are talking about too many incidents like the Colonia, like the JBS, but these were not industrial attacks. We need to understand that these were IT-oriented ransomware. Now, why people are referring to the industrial? Because the service was damaged, but it was not because of the attack, because lack of business continued to preparedness. So this is what happened. We had the Oldsmar, obviously, Israeli water utility, and maybe few other, but all the rest were IT-oriented attacks. Furthermore, I want to say that we are still didn't reach the point that organization will educate their people, which I'm personally working very, very hard on it, conducting classes as many as possible, but still not too many are coming. Furthermore, obviously everybody is talking about the COVID-19 and the remote access, which many organizations not do strongly enough. Another topic which I must mention from my angle as the industrial cybersecurity experts, too many people are talking about IT-OT convergence. And this makes me upset because IT and OT networks must never converge. The data may converge. The analysis of the data may converge, but not the network. So we are in, this is what happened. We still don't see companies investing in strong cybersecurity. Maybe there is a reason for that, because many legacy systems are installed and this is very difficult to upgrade them. But I do hope that in 2022 we will see a progress, and I'm definitely here to contribute to that.
All right. James, off on to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so a couple of things that we've seen on the manufacturing side, I'll just talk a little bit about that, because one of the products we engage with is heavily pushed into the manufacturing piece, and with large automotive manufacturers, is manufacturing's been hit a lot with this COVID mandate issue. And I notice in talking to a lot of different manufacturers, trying to figure that out. And then you add in supply chain disruption, and that's another big issue for the manufacturing sector. So one of the things we've been trying to help with is this whole issue of business continuity at CSD Cyber, and helping especially manufacturing move through those plans that they've had, and try to deal with not only this pandemic, but also lack of supply chain to keep them moving. And I'll sort of echo what the last guest said, that we're looking heavily at IT on the security side, obviously, and Al can talk a little more about the endpoint security piece. But I think we also have to look hard at OT. And in talking with manufacturers, especially on the plant floors, they're very concerned about how they secure those Windows PCs, those Linux PCs, and in some cases, we're seeing more Mac come on the shop floor. And how do they secure those when they're trying to control things like robot arms and things on the plant floor? And that's a big issue, right? So we're trying to work here in Colorado Springs anyway with the PTAC, so that we can educate manufacturing in a more specific way on the OT side. And so we're actually putting together an event on February 1st that we'd be happy to talk about offline, to educate manufacturers on how they can better secure their OT situation in the plants.
All right. And Al.
Yeah, great. Chris, thanks for having us today. So just to kind of echo a little bit about what Jim was saying with regard to some of that IT-OT divide on the industrial side, you still see a lot of organizations with regard to that DMZ, where there's a break in between the two sets, right? And we're seeing that in the commercial space, but from that perspective, we're looking at a zero trust framework. Is that impossible? Well, maybe it isn't. But one of the things that a lot of these folks where we have seen attacks is that they're always going to go to the point of least resistance, right? So, is it somebody that's plugging in an e-cigarette on an unsecured desktop that's in, a front-end machine for a robot arm on a factory floor? What is it that's getting attacked? Is it the Bluetooth? Is it the Wi-Fi environments that you're having these areas where there could be some weaknesses? And when we see that, I think part of the reason and part of the success that we had with regard to our show is not only looking at it from the perspective of the technical side, but looking at the business silos that get affected by it. So when you look at, your engineering and your R&D, what are they concerned about when they're losing that information? Well, they don't want to lose proprietary information. Well, what is the finance team worried about? Well, they're worried about all of the numbers, because if they get hit, all that data gets to go out, right? And a lot of people are going to find out some stuff they're not supposed to. So when we look at it, we have to look at it not only from what we're doing, but how are we helping in that zero trust environment along all of these different business units, and then being able to help secure those the best way we can to make the entire organization, cyber safe and also business secure. we've said, and I've heard some numbers that Citibank is actually looking at spending almost $1 billion a year on cybersecurity. And those numbers are huge, right? And really what it comes down to is these C-level people are coming in and they're saying, if we don't have that cybersecurity level, what do we have? How are our customers going to trust us, right? And that's what it comes down to. So, to echo that, what does the zero trust environment look like? How are we helping support that, especially in today's world with the pandemic? And then, just kind of going from there and looking at those perspectives. So.
All right. Well, let's take a break here from our sponsors. We'll be right back in a minute. Blockframe Technology offers next-generation blockchain managed trust and security. Unique, non-fungible tokens are used to secure software bill of materials to provide data quality and security for every transaction in your supply chain. Deploy advanced peer-to-peer product security, scale zero trust capability to millions of IoT devices, allow vendor tracking and accountability, and rapidly reset from compromise. Unchangeable, time-sequence blockchain data provides next-generation security using machine learning trust algorithms and audit analytics. Start securing your supply chain today. Contact Blockframe at www.blockframetech.com. Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today, our year in review roundtable. And before the break, we let all of our guests go around and tell, what was their take from the highlights of 2021. And each of them having some of our best performing shows really showed the groundwork of what 2021 was about. And it's OT to IT and cloud and then the business of it. And that's straight across the board. They all connected there where everything's either an end node or a cloud. And what's the business of securing those? And I think that's where we're getting to. So kind of coming back here, let's open up to our guests to ask any questions to different, or our host to ask questions to the guests about what they heard in the 2021 review.
As everyone was talking, one thing that I also noticed, Chris, maybe like a higher level or more general than the themes that you point out, is everyone really spoke about how during this past year, when we had a time of maybe a decrease of activity and a decrease in, movement around the world, that we actually possibly had an increase in security needs and practices, which is really interesting. And I think that we're all really aware of what's going on with the Great Resignation in our country and, internationally too, which thankfully cybersecurity is not on the top 10 industries that are impacted. But I would be curious to know everyone's thoughts on how you think what's going on socially and economically and with the Great Resignation, like how that is not really impacting security in this past year, but how are we prepping for that in this next year? And what do you think the repercussions of that are going to be?
Anyone in particular you want to address that too?
So I'll take it on, Martha.
Yeah, go for it. Thank you.
All right, great. So I think, one of the things that I look at, and I look at it from the business perspective as well as the technical side, but I think it depends a lot on the industry and the vertical that you're talking about, right? One of the things that we can see in maybe a more, call it a commercial space or even call it utilities, right? Or cities, that state and local governments have limited budget with what they can do and how they can do it, right? And they do have those customers. They do have clients that reside within their cities, keeping the water safe, right? Keeping the electric going, and that area. But when you're looking at different areas like a manufacturing environment where you have 500 or 600 cars going through a day, 24/7, right? That environment with one slip of a USB being put into a front end machine and throwing the weld off by 2 millimeters can raise havoc, right? Or even rebooting an environment so that, can you afford to have hundreds of machines getting rebooted at the same? Probably not, right? So all of those things, I really think if you're looking at it from the social or business perspective of this, what does each one of these verticals look like? And how do they have their specific areas? And for us, we've looked at 4 areas that we concentrate on with regard to manufacturing, medical, military, and municipalities, the 4 M's, if you will, to focus in on and hone on those areas where they have their specific interests. So I think that, and then looking at the mix between working from home now and working on the factory floor of the office has really contributed to exponentially opening up areas that maybe in the past, before the pandemic, we didn't consider so much. So those are my two cents.
I think there's definitely been a trend, historically speaking, that when companies aren't hitting their revenue goals, right, they tend to decrease funds allocated for R&D and security. And as you just pointed out, we're not in a position where we can maintain that anymore, right? There's too much dependency on our world being online all the time. And it's not just a function of cost anymore, it's a function of quality of life.
Yeah, Martha, this is Jim. I just wanted to add to that. I think people in companies specifically need to stop thinking about cybersecurity as a cost center and applying those same ideas that you normally would to a cost center, that's lost money that will never come back. And if we're going to cut anywhere, we're going to cut that out of the budget, right? Look at different training budgets and things that always get slashed when times are a little difficult for companies. Cyber should not be in that same mindset, right? Cyber is a preventative expense that's necessary for a company, because we all know too well that companies don't come to grips with the experience that they're going to have when they actually do get a cyber attack. And that's the wrong time to be thinking about your budget for cybersecurity.
Yeah, right, Jim. I mean, I can 100% echo that, because not only that I agree with you, but I have experienced it firsthand. I mean, I was a rate setter in the state of California. I ran a very large federal power grid. And I can tell you, I mean, one thing that echoes every single day for me is we are as strong as our weakest link. So when I operated the federal grid in the state of California, I had several municipalities and all that. We did data transfer with, and awareness is so important at every level. Cybersecurity may be very important to me, but it may not be as important to that small utility, that small municipality. And there goes my cybersecurity posture. So we have to, I mean, I kind of empathize with their thought as well, because for them, I mean, at the end of the day, they want to keep their rates low. They want to make sure that they average out at like 5 or 6 cents per kilowatt hour, in the market. And every dime they put in, the ratepayers are going to ask, what is it in for me? And cybersecurity doesn't get them anything. Most people don't understand that keeping the business secure is how you maintain good rates. They just want to see that put into a substation or a transformer or a transmission line, so they can make more money or reduce the rate. So it's very hard, and I totally echo with you, Jim, on this one. It's very hard to keep that posture at every level. So awareness, education is very important to do that. And we have done that, but still, it's a daunting task.
Yeah, it really is. And the only other thing I'll comment on, then I'll let everybody else comment, is, a lot of companies think that the government agencies are going to be there for them when something occurs. And as we all know, they're stretched very, very thin. They have good ideas on how they want to help folks, but all too often you hear those stories of people engaging with the 3-letter agencies, namely the FBI and others, saying, look, I have a ransomware attack. This is the situation. We've been able to drill it down to these IP addresses, whatever cybersecurity capability they may have on the forensic side. However, the agencies are overloaded, right? And they typically tell people, unfortunately, that depending on the amount being requested by the adversary to pay the ransom. And then it becomes an issue. And I've been in part of these situations many times with the forensics folks and negotiating, actually helping the company negotiate the ransom down because they have no idea how to do it. And and then you enter in the whole crypto piece of Bitcoin, and it's a very daunting task for especially a small, medium-sized company that really has no idea. So preventative measures, I know it's hard to stomach, but it's so important for companies to at least have a conversation at the senior management level or at the board level and stop checking boxes about cybersecurity, because that doesn't help when you get attacked.
I mean, we're really all an echo chamber, right? We all agree with that. And I think it's really hard to get our non-security focused counterparts, on board with that. Sean, I know you're not a guest, you're a fellow host, but I'd be interested to know your thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, we're dancing all around it. And so when we talk about information security, it's just been rebranded this new second term, cyber, right? Because 80% of our business processes are automated. And that's what we need to be able to convey to the rest of the organization. Analyze the process, especially those most critical ones that could disrupt your business. When we're talking about ransomware has exponentially gone up. I've seen 2 reports this week that it's going to cost at least $250 billion by 2031 to businesses. So what are the big things that we can do that are part of your business processes that aren't necessarily cybersecurity focused? BCDR, backing up your information, backing up your data. It's a lot easier to say pound dirt and pick up from a current than it is to pay millions and millions of dollars. But then the other aspect of it is, what is the breach? Did they just encrypt your environment, or do they actually have a copy of your information, your data as well? And if that's privacy information, because we want to bring that back to privacy, then we have a bigger issue. But it all comes back down to the human element. And we have all seen and discussed today, we're remote, we're in the cloud, bring it back to what Chris talked about. What's the synergy of the discussion? Because we're more remote now, there is more of a requirement for the education, the training, the awareness aspect. We just got contacted by a multi-billion-dollar global corporation to do cybersecurity, basic cybersecurity onboarding training, because they don't have anything in place. And so one of the basic ones that we have is about 2 hours long. It's asynchronous. And it's got 12 modules. So they came back and no. We need something that's like 5 to 10 minutes to be able to, that's just scratching the surface. And so again, the culture associated with the mindset of those who are leading the organization, bring it back to the municipalities and the local government. Some of our classes with our cyber executives, we're still hearing from the government leadership. Talk to a CIO who's also dual-hatted as CISO, who's also dual-hatted as the CISO. And so limited budget, the changes come back to who's leading the government. So the council, mayors, they're cyclic. Everybody's running for election every 2 to 3 years. So the focus for those government leaders is not on what the CISO or the CIO needs to be able to protect the city's information or the data. It's to get elected, and they start that almost as soon as they come back on board. So all of it comes together, right?
Sean, I'm an analogy person. So as you were talking, I was envisioning like an operation room that we all know needs to be sterile, and a business person coming in telling the doctor, no, don't worry about a sterile room. Just quickly wash your hands.
Yeah, now we're on the battlefield, and sometimes that really is how we triage things.
Would like to add here something that we should not look at cybersecurity according to return on investment. You know, this is a major problem. Many organizations say, okay, if I invest 100,000, what will I gain? I think it is incorrect. We need to invest in education. Yes, cost education must be short, cost effective, and this is very, very important. And furthermore, we need to invest in incident response training. Just think about it. What is the return on investment if you train your people what to do exactly when incidents occur? And still, many companies are not doing it. So what we should do in 2022, we are already doing great things, but whatever we are doing, we just need to do it slightly better with more attention. Okay, those companies which cannot afford to have their own people, they need to work with managed security service providers. When we are talking about remote access, every remote access must be authorized and must be supervised. There must be a person who is responsible for disconnecting the remote access when the action is completed. So many things we can do, and I just hope that people will listen and say, okay, what next? What you are offering us to do?
All right, so Jonathan, bringing into you, what is your highlights, being one of our best performing shows last year? Tell us the highlights and what you think the top points in 2021 were.
So I had a couple. The big one, Chris, I see is uncertainty. I think that kind of wove its way through 2021 and presented itself in a multitude of different ways. But I think if I had to pick a theme and a trend for 2021, I would say it's uncertainty. Doesn't matter if you're looking at financial markets, if you're looking at government spending. I mean, I can circle it back around to kind of your topic. I mean, look at the changes that OSD pulled in November with CMMC. So, I mean, I would say that uncertainty is the biggest theme or trend I have seen in 2021 across all sectors and touching basically everybody. And I think if people thought for a minute that they could probably write down 10 ways that uncertainty affected either them in their professional life, their business relationships, their strategies, or even at home. I mean, lots of us with kids, right? It's 10 o'clock at night, you get an email saying, hey, school's canceled tomorrow. So uncertainty is what I'm going to go with.
Yeah. So how does that, compare to other times of uncertainty? You know, we've been around for a couple years. We've seen those back in other downturns or whatever. Is it the worst we've ever seen?
I don't know if it's the worst we've ever seen. I think that the speed of information certainly has something to do with how it affects people. One of my, favorite things to talk about is people are like, oh, pick a statistic, and they're like, it's so much worse than it was, 50 years ago. Crime rate. I mean, anything. Well, if you actually go back and look at the metrics, it's not. It's the speed of information that changes our perception of that. It's not the reality that's changed, it's our perception of it. So again, when I say, the uncertainty, I don't know if it's more than it has been in the past, but I think it's definitely more palpable to people. And I think it touches them in ways they didn't conceive it would touch them. And yeah, there's this, I will say, due to the speed of information, things change much faster now than they have in the past. And I do think that is a change. So I don't know if necessarily the amount of uncertainty has changed. Certainly in certain industries and parts of our lives, it has. You know, you show up at the airport, is your plane going to be there? Maybe, maybe not.
Mhm.
But certainly our awareness of the uncertainty, I would say, is definitely at an all-time high.
I'm really uncertain whether.
What I was thinking, Jonathan, when you were talking is, I'm really curious what patterns of behavior look like with this, right? So at times, historically, at times when there's a high amount of uncertainty, I wonder if people really are concerned with security practices, or if that kind of goes out the window in favor of other, concerns or distractions that people may have. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. And I can actually tie it back again to, kind of our, if we want to, our cybersecurity flair, right? Start with, probably the organization I know best because it's who I work for. Look at DoD. Look at all the number of people, right, that were permitted to work from home. Well, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, I mean, you had to go to your CO, right? You had to get permission to work remotely. The security things were largely a huge, giant pain, and that's becoming very commonplace. And I would flat out just argue, and Sean, I'm sure has some opinions on this. People working from home is not as secure as people working at a facility where there's oversight, because you have much more of the human element involved. Uh, Problems that can happen, right? You're going from using a Wi-Fi network maybe that's managed by DoD or some contractor at a very high level. Well, now you're on your Linksys system, right? That's your 16-year-old setup. So yeah, I think there are definite ways that things have fallen between the cracks. But I also think it's one of those times where if people stop to actually be aware of what's going on, I think those are the people that are going to adapt the best. Because yes, even though, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fluid changes, unless you kind of keep in the back of your mind what's really important, those things are going to fall by the wayside too. A very specific example of that I have seen is that right in this build up to CMMC, we have basically what I would call is the foundation, which is the NIST 800 171 standard. And I've seen this across the industrial base because really from DoD, the only hard requirement was that you do the assessment, right? You come up with your POAM, you have your implementation, your manual, and you put your score into the SPRS system. For 80%, I don't know, Sean, tell me, that's all they did. And
yeah, self-attestation is a checklist. And if nobody's asking, nobody's monitoring.
And some of the POAMs that I've seen look like a construction schedule, call it a 1-year schedule, and it looks like they're building the entire house in the last 2 weeks, right? They right loaded everything because all they were doing is trying to get that score in. And now, right, back in either the last week of October, 1st of November, I don't remember the exact date, right? They basically pulled that whole program back, said, hey, we're going to basically revisit the whole thing, stop doing what you're doing, but, you have to be, fully compliant with 800 171. Then a couple weeks ago, I found out, right, I've been helping people focus on this, right? You can't keep kicking the can. You got to get this done. And there are some real, take out the techie reasons we like to talk about. There's money at stake here, right? If you don't manage this carefully, it is going to cost you it's not a matter of, if, it's a matter of when down the road, right? Because there's adversaries out there. And in some cases, these are basically just criminal thugs that are going to take advantage of this situation. And so now we have these companies, right? They're basically like, oh, well, we're going to rate load it all. We're going to wait to see what happens. Well, I happen to know that, for instance, General Dynamics is using that SPRS score as a discriminator right now. And if your score, and I'm only talking about a couple business units that I know well, if your score is not up to a certain threshold, then you don't get to do business with GD, that business unit. I see that being rolled out very quickly in some of the big prime contractors, and be like, oh, you have a negative, I'm trying to think of the worst I've seen, but I mean, I've definitely seen in the negative 80s more. Those people aren't going to do business, and it's not going to be the federal government that says that. The prime contractors, I believe, are going to lead that charge.
All right. Well, thanks for everybody that joined on today. We definitely appreciate it. And this special year in review for 2021 and what to look forward to 2022. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
Hey,
Go on.
perfect.
Have a
All
great
right.
day.
Bye.
You heard it today on New Cyber Frontier. Right.
Sorry.
Can you edit that out?